Welcome to Team Talk. I'm delighted to have with me Neil Lawrence. Describe yourself as a business well-being and ND coach. Welcome, Neil.
Lovely to be here, James. Really looking forward to our conversation together.
Fantastic. And I know one of the things that you're passionate about helping people and leaders about is to help them truly understand their teams and other people.
Yeah.
And today's subject is really focusing in on building inclusive workspace and helping people really understand neurodiversity in the workplace as well. It's probably an area that's quite misunderstood. Would you say that's fair?
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, James. It's the hot topic at the moment. And there's lots of shouty stuff out there about what people should be doing. And as anyone who's worked with a coach will know, or an accredited coach sure will know, that should's always a really interesting word to notice when people are using about their own experience. But I think the most misunderstood fact is, and this was pointed out to me, so I hasten to add, I'm not naturally this wise. Neurodiversity just means diverse brainwaves, so it's everyone. So it's a bit like when people say, I've got mental health. Well, we've all got mental health. And obviously that's another area that I spend a lot of time in as well, another space. But it's kind of the same in neurodiversity. So all of us are in neurodiverse workplaces. I guess it's about whether we see it like that and start from that premise, I'd say.
Fantastic. And I'm hoping that you're going to share with us today some real tips that leaders can take away, actions that they can take to benefit them, their employees, and the workplace.
Absolutely.
So Let's start right at the top. Can you explain what it is and kind of why it's really important for leaders to understand neurodiversity?
I think maybe I'll give an example, which is a personal one, which if it's useful, you can keep in the edit, and if it's not, you can cut it out. But so going back to the days when I used to be a teacher, I'm just going to plug in my my console as we talk. We had to, as you know, teachers fill in like 1 billion reports a year for students, and the way it was done when I was doing it, I think this is probably at the beginning of the decade, was on a grid, on a spreadsheet, on a computer, numbers tallied up, and then a descriptor at the end. And I'm dyscalculic, which is a revolting word to try and spell, which means that I've got maths dyslexia. So they give a word that any kind of dyslexic would kind of struggle with. I think that's probably scientists having a laugh, right? But I went to senior leader and I said, if we had, for the students in our classes that have got additional need, we would not put a grid in front of them like this without some kind of support, So what about members of staff who are ND? And she looked up at me and smiled and she said, you're an adult, so you'll have strategies, and then walked off. And I think that in a nutshell is why we need to talk about it.
You were brave enough actually to speak out. What happened next?
Same as always happened when I did those kind of things. I was kind of just an eye roll. Maverick was the word that was used a lot about me and my time in education. Which was not meant as a compliment. I mean, what it actually is it means I'm a very good organisational consultant, but that was not, as I now know, but that wasn't appreciated within the world of education. Raising your head above the parapet's not.
Right. Okay. It didn't benefit you at the time. But perhaps those maverick tendencies, you've learned something from that could benefit other people who might be in a similar situation.
I think that's a very good. I think that's a very good point. Maverick is a judgment that's put on it. Actually, what it was, as you say, raising a question about the way that, in that particular instance, ND staff were, what they were expected to do within the workplace. So, that is what I do these days. I help people often, sometimes neurodivergent, sometimes not, who are trying to find their place within their careers and within their workspaces, and helping them have those conversations. Managing up, we call it these days, wouldn't we? But I think in education it was called interfering at the time.
Yeah, and I guess there's a certain amount of education, let's call it that, required for the leaders, the managers, to truly understand and be able to respond in a far better way than your experience.
Yeah,
I think they need.
Yeah, what do I think they need?
Yeah.
I think they need the space and time themselves to understand that work does not have to mean staying up till stupid o'clock and wearing yourself thin. That everybody needs to have a reflective space and a reflective practice within the workplace. That psychological safety should be a given for anybody, and that all work we do is co-creative. So if you're in in that particular instance, if you're a neurodivergent member of staff who's kind of not feeling the best because of the system in place, that's a conversation that you should be able to have with a senior leader, without it being a us and them situation. So I think it's that. I think it's being brave enough as a senior leader to be able to go, okay, what's this about? And bring some curiosity to it. What assumptions am I making as a senior leader about the processes we've got in place? Can we adapt those? Are there things we need to think about? So those are the kind of questions that I raise with senior leaders now, for example, when we're thinking about ND.
That's really, really interesting. Is there any advice you would give someone to try and get the balance right between having that open conversation without being patronising to the individual? I've been in a situation only the other week where I was thinking, I'm aware of something, but I also don't want to be patronising. I want to treat them as I would anyone else. How would you advise me or anyone else that approaches that?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the senior leader, but then also from the perspective of potentially from the neurodivergent member, staff, or just any of us within the interactions we have. Me too, actually. I've had one recently where there's somebody who's put things in place to make my life a lot easier. So there are systems that have been put in place, but without any consultation with me. So as grateful as I am for that, there's a bit of me going, but you didn't ask me what I needed. You've made an assumption. So that, like you say, that kind of feeling patronised, even though the intention was completely benign. They want to look after me. So then me, as the neurodivergent members of staff, I'm like, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to say anything. So we get ourselves in these situations. And the answer's really simple. It's about getting into the habit of having transparent and co-creative conversations as members of staff or as collaborators or as colleagues that invite curiosity and deeper listening and have the time to reflect. So it needs to be a bit slower, a bit like our conversation now.
Yeah.
So that we can raise those kind of questions. And so any solution is done by both people. So everyone kind of comes out of it. And it might be right for that moment. It might not be right in 2 months' time. So you come back to it and you say, is that still working? Is that okay? So, I have worked in places where that's the case, and it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
What, like really simple stuff? Like, well, is there anything I should do differently? Does this work? Does this not work? What are your preferences? This kind of thing?
Yeah, we don't overcomplicate everything. We build narratives, and then we're fearful of saying the wrong thing, which means that either we end up saying nothing or often sometimes saying the wrong thing because we're trying to overcompensate, when actually what we're doing is not trusting our ability to talk to somebody else. I mean, I think that's not just about these kind of conversations for a senior leader or neurodivergent members of staff. I think that's systemic. I think that's society in general. And we spend a lot of time on social media, and that can be quite othering and can be quite tribal of itself. So I think our brains have kind of got much more into this thing of, I don't know what someone else wants from me, and I'm not sure what's going on here. So I think it is that simple. It's like, because if someone's bringing it up, it's like, well, what would you like from here? What is it that you need? Well, I'm not sure. Okay, well, is there anything that's working within this? Yes. Would more time help?
As you said, it's like we're all neurodiverse. We've all got a different brain. We all think slightly different. So I guess the questions are applicable to absolutely anyone in terms of their preferences or how they like to work. We almost need to, not worry about the label.
I love that, James. Yeah, and I was thinking that, and I mean, labels are really useful. I've got quite a lot of them, and they will enough for about 7 podcasts. But that each of them has helped me at some point in my life to get to grips with part of my experience. But then the danger is with that either we, especially at the moment, we cling to people like us and we point out and go, they're the problem, or that we limit our own possibility by going, I am this, therefore this. So I think there is something about reading the label but not necessarily wearing it on our foreheads all the time. And I think you're absolutely right. If we entered every conversation with a sense of trust and mutual respect and space to reflect, then this would be just a generic way that a company worked, or it would be part of the company culture, be part of an organization's culture. So working with someone who's neurodivergent wouldn't be any different to the kind of questions you might ask of any other members of staff. And it's the information that comes through that will be the salient bit, or the important bit, I guess.
Yeah. And when does having that label, can you bring that to life for us? When does it being labelled help?
Okay, so I've got a number of, I don't know how this has happened. I think I've said this before, but I feel a bit like Snow White in that scene where all the birds start landing on her shoulder in the forest. That's how I feel about ADHD clients this year. I have been so blessed. I now say that I'm an ADHD coach, but people have come to me and I haven't done anything for that to happen. And those that have come to me, particularly, I'm thinking about some of the ADHD clients, they talk about their emotional experiences and how they felt about themselves before they knew that their brain wiring was the reason why they felt like they do. And there was nothing wrong with their brain wiring. They just needed to have some understanding of what was going on. In fact, I go as far as to say that for lots of people who are neurodivergent, what they pick up on is the symptoms of not being able to work within the system they're in because it doesn't allow for them. That's the first thing they notice. I don't feel good. Not like for me, as a dyscalculic, I can think of 5 things at once. It's wonderful. I can have 5 separate things running in my head at the same time that I need to keep my mind on. Keeps me really healthily, richly entertained as well. So that's, and I'm not going to call it a superpower either. I'm not going to put the narrative on that. That's just what I get. That's what my brain does. Thank you, brain. But when I've got, if we go back to the other example, 4 days to churn out 200 reports on a grid, suddenly I'm having a fight, flight, freeze response. So what I'm noticing is that I'm in crisis. So that it's that really. So it's been able to go, oh, my brain, it's knowing what the brain does and accepting that and making the most of that and enjoying who we are. and not just going, it's because I feel distressed. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if it's
Yeah, so it helps the individual, because you can then, I guess, analyze it, if that's the right word, in a different way, understand yourself a bit better and how it's operating.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I mean, I think I'm just thinking about it now. I think I spend most of my time with neurodivergent clients trying to help them feel that they can fit in to the work system they're in, because they're
Okay.
struggling with that.
Yeah, and leaders, managers can play a huge role in that. How does a label potentially help the leader to behave differently, if that's the right thing?
That's a good question. So I think what we do well in the UK, we're good at raising issues. We're really good at it at the moment. So I think there's lots of specialists around, and there's lots of people advertising the education bit about what a neurodivergent, different kinds of neurodivergent brains might typically look like. So that's one level. So yeah, you can skill yourself up about possibly what ADHD might do, or dyscalculia might do, autism might do, or autism and ADHD, which are a common combination. Yeah. But then there's the bit we don't do well, which is we don't humanize that. So we might even go so far going, okay, so if neurodivergent staff are kind of experiencing this, we're going to do it. So we do an audit, we get some responses from them, then we build a process. It's coming back to what you said before, actually. So other people are building the process for somebody else who's not, even though they've had some input into it, aren't necessarily the best people to do it. And then you go, there, we're giving you that. So
Right.
I think it's about building in works. Well, first of all, I think it doesn't cost a lot of money, if any. So that's the good news for all leaders and CEOs out there. It's not going to cost you. What it does mean is, though, it's this co-creation piece again. So it's about, it doesn't need to be a working party. It doesn't have to be that whole thing, although obviously in terms of policy and culture, that can be really helpful. But it's about having different kind of spaces in the workplace. So I've got, in my mind, I have this, some people dream of a desert island. I've got this beautiful example of how I see a neurodiverse workspace. And
Okay.
so I don't know if that'd be helpful for me to kind of share a bit with.
Go on. You've teased us now, Neil. So
Okay.
let us into your world.
So for some reason it's open plan, but there's booths, there's corners with booths in. So for those people that are experiencing sensory overload, will really need to hyper focus for a little while, but don't want to wear themselves out, they can go into the booth and feel sealed off for a bit. So that'll be number one. Number two, things that are culturally unacceptable, like wearing headphones, stimming, walking around.
Sorry, what was that?
So
Stimming.
stimming is a kind of repetitive action that a person might do in order to help them focus or feel calmer. So it could be, hands, could be on the face, could be a squeeze ball, just really helps people focus, especially if they're restless. And, a lot of ADHD people talk about just this sense of constantly feeling restless, just a restlessness. So we don't question people for getting up and walking around the room, for example. We trust that they're going to manage their time the best they can. That that they can stim, that they can wear headphones, that they can rock in their place if they want to. Whatever it is that helps them focus the best in order for them to work at their best. And the space is big enough to allow for that, then I think that will make an enormous difference. Knowing when to say things as well. So, for example, if someone is bound, really needs a regular routine, it really helps them settle their brain. So that that can be an autistic trait, for example. Although I think that's true for all of us. We all kind of like routine a lot of the time. Try not to drop things in last minute. Yes, we need people to be flexible, but also if we can build in time and go, next Tuesday you're going to be doing this. Do you want to sit down and think about the plan, about how you're going to do that? If you want someone to go somewhere, so dyslexic, a lot of dyslexic people and dyscalculic people have difficulty with directions. So we just go that little bit extra and sit down and go, do you want me to go through this with you? Do you want me to give you the directions? Will that be helpful? Have you got time to do that yourself? So it's just little bits like that, I think. But crucially, something I meant to say earlier, it's not about letting people off the hook. It's not about going, oh, you know, so you just do what you want and we're going to trust you. And, you know, performance is still really important. The rules of the company and the organization are still highly important. And, you know, improvement plans are there for a reason sometimes, and it's not about punishing people. So it's not about going, they're not living up to the performance that we need within that job, but that's okay because, you know, they got a label. It's not about that.
And how about stuff that could be controversial, could be just really annoying for other people?
Yeah,
So if I'm tapping on the thing,
yeah.
Actually that might just be annoying for somebody. Somebody with sensory overload might not even be able to be in the meeting if that was going on. How do you deal with stuff like that in the right way?
That's beautiful. That's exactly the nub of it. And that's, yeah. So, for example, some people might need to step out of meetings who've got sensory overload and not be labelled as being, you know, storming out. Sometimes people, you're absolutely right. I think, again, it's about all of us knowing how to work together. So, if there's you know, I mean, I'm not suggesting there should be a stimming corner, but, you know, a soundproof stimming corner, but also, and not also that all ticks or all stims that people might do would be loud or would create noise. But I think it's about us being able to do the thing that we're worst at, and that is negotiate. So, yes, someone might feel the need to hum while they're working, but then if the other person next to them is really provoked by that or can't concentrate, they also need, it's about how people negotiate that space. So this desert island neurodiverse workspace has different areas that people can go to if they need to. Yeah, nice. It's not just about my tree, because then we are in the middle of what does, I think, is really destroying our ability to work together at the moment generally, and that is my space, my truth. You're oppressing me. You know, it's got to be the only way we can.
I think that can happen a lot sometimes. You can have almost personal allowances that allow people to do things in their own time and space.
Yeah.
But then let's take a meeting, for instance. A lot of meetings may not allow for people to be walking around in. Just by, nobody may have said that, but it's just through how everyone else behaves. And if you're trying to fit in, you're not just going to stand up and walk around unless you've got express permission, for example.
So a couple of things on that. First of all, we're trying to reduce the amount of time in a neurodiverse workspace where a neurodivergent person might have to mask, for example. That doesn't mean there aren't times where they're also, it's about negotiation. So, you know, what there can be is an agreement that somebody can walk out of a meeting 20 minutes in, spend a minute or two outside and then come back in again. If they're doing it quietly and not drawing attention, and that the culture of a company can be such that they understand that, rather than making an assumption about that person walking out or them being, you know, getting exemption. It's not about that. It's not about us being either this or this. It's about how we work together. And again, that's a co-creative piece, and that would need to be done on a person by person basis. So, you know, like I think about schools again, like, so some people, like some students used to have, you know, stand outside cards where they could like flash up a blue card or something and go outside. And one person was saying to me, so you got the whole class looking at you while you're walking out that room, knowing you've got this blue piece of card. And that's not necessarily helpful either. And I'm thinking again of someone else who said to me, you know, there is a place for masking. We all talk about unmasking at the moment, but masking sometimes keeps us safe. If we're feeling vulnerable, we take the mask off. How's that helping us? So again, all of these things are not the hard, fast, easy to read 5-minute LinkedIn article. No disrespect to LinkedIn because I love it. I think there needs to be, again, this ability to negotiate, and that's the human bit, and that's the complicated bit, because life is messy.
Yeah. Yeah, you could just say have a, that's the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
True, open, honest conversation with, good intent to help the individual, to help for the good of the team.
I love that good intent bit, James. Exactly. Yeah. Because I think a lot of things can be misconstrued as punitive when actually the intention is good. It's just about how that conversation or that particular situation has unfolded. So yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm no expert, so if I get it wrong, call me out, Neil, please. But given that we're all neurodiverse,
Yeah.
what we often talk about are then the extremes, aren't they?
Yeah.
But sometimes a lot of things apply to a number of people. So if we were to do a poll now to say, look, do you think a lot of meeting time is wasted? I reckon 90% of people would say yeah. So, for example, if a inclusive team got together and said, "Oh, well, how do we redo meetings?" They might conclude that if we do them for 20 minutes standing up, yeah, that's not, obviously there's more than one answer. To make this a short story,
Yeah.
if we do them 20 minutes standing up, that's going to benefit everyone because they don't get bored and they pay attention and they can not just talk, they can look at things and move about and stuff. But it probably helps other people as well. If you've got ADHD, for example, that might really, really help you because you've got to pay attention for a shorter period of time. You've got the
Yeah.
ability to walk around without being singled out as somebody walking around.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's not the one solution, but it's just an illustration to get your opinion on in terms of how we can almost make some of these things inclusive to change stuff for the better for everyone.
Yeah, I'm mixing it up. So yes, one meeting like that, but the next one sit down, or the next, the meeting after that at a different point, a different place. And ADHD wise, if things are novel or they're done in different ways, the brain finds it easier to get into what's happening because it responds to the novelty of it, and that increases the amount of dopamine. And I was just thinking about the opposite. I was thinking about the routine thing when we were talking about that before, because for the ADHD brain, for a lot of people who are kind of working with that, routine starts to feel like it's strangling them, and in fact lowers the dopamine level, which then makes it harder to actually do the work. So it really, it is about, I think, having a variety of different ways that, and not to be a one-time conversation. So just keep working on it and keep trying things out. No, I think that's the thing, and you're right. I think it benefits everyone because I'm thinking, everyone is. I think I'm going to make this blanket statement. I think most people are struggling with communication and relationships in this country. I think there is a real problem with approaching and holding exactly the kind of conversations that you were just talking about before, James. I don't think it's limited to the workspace. I think people can feel very defensive or worried about what the other person wants, and there's a huge amount of suspicion about what other people are after, rather than an expectation that things are going to be helpful or good. So we often can approach things like that, and you translate that into the workplace, and particularly around teams, and you've got a real problem. So if you are working as a leader, as a senior leader or a middle manager, or just as a team leader, on how to get people to talk within their own team, but then also how for them to work with other teams, I think that's really powerful, and then that opens up the door for bringing some of these neurodiverse conversations, so that it becomes a wider piece of work where everything is culturally happening within the workplace.
What steps might a leader, manager take to facilitate such different levels of communication?
Yeah. Well, not the buy the course, put everyone on the course have your CPD certificate. Well, maybe, especially if it was really good. Especially if I was doing it. I'm not doing that at the moment. But, I would say it's more about, there might be a consultancy element of it, actually. If there is something within the culture of the organisation that leaders can't quite put their finger on as to why things are siloed or difficult for people to talk through and things feel stuck, there might be a really good case for bringing in an audit or a consultant to kind of help do some of that, and coaching particularly. I know I'm biased because I am one, but I do honestly think coaching is one of the best tools to kind of help open up thoughts. But essentially, if you want some really easy wins, look at how we write emails to each other. Look at the language we use. Look at the function of the email, particularly if we whisked it off quick. And all of us, I think, unless it's just me, has had that moment where we've pressed send before we thought about it. And oh my word, do we regret it 5 seconds later? Yes, and thank you, Outlook, for giving us 30 seconds now to grab it back like Google do. But sometimes you don't get it in time. So that's the first thing. Just having people, and it could actually be a workshop, but just getting people together at different parts of the organisation to look at what the emails, how the emails are sent, when they're sent, what the expectation of reading is, and the language that's used could really, really help bring people into a place where they're able to talk to each other a little better, or aren't triggered. No, I'm not going to use the word triggered. Aren't set off by receiving the email. So that's the first thing. The second thing is meeting times to be slowed down, in as much as stop over cramming a billion things to go through because you can't think, and open up a meeting space so that people are actually having time to reflect and think, and for everyone to listen to each other. So it's not just...
That's interesting, because obviously some people work a lot faster, don't they, than others. Some people like to reflect and listen wherever they are. There's different styles.
Totally.
If you like. So on one hand, I totally agree with you, and I guess on the other hand, being objective about it, I'm also saying, well, maybe there's just different types of meeting. There is a quick fire round or a thinking meeting, or a focus and concentrate. So I'm going to brief you all in advance. You can bring stuff. Different purposes.
So you're right. A briefing meeting is, you do this, you do that, we need that, done by this time, done by that time, let's get back together and see where we are. Boom. Yeah, absolutely. So you are right. I think in general terms, people work too fast too much of the time, and that accelerates. Well, it can give a rush. It is best we get an adrenaline hit. We feel like we're in the moment. We feel like we're achieving, and we feel like we're going faster. But as people know, we can only keep that up for a certain amount of time. If we get hooked on that as our way of feeling like we're working, that I think is problematic for health, and it's also problematic for long-term decision making. So it's not about being in the moment and enjoying it. And again, I'm thinking of ADHD clients I've got, and them talking about the hyper-focus bit and how much they love it. When it's good, when it's really good, they're totally in the zone. They can go down rabbit hole, and they have to make sure they don't stay there for days, but they'll really get into the work that they're doing. So there's that element of it. But again, maybe it's about balance, James, but maybe it's about the headline before. This meeting, this is what the purpose of this meeting is for. This is going to be a quick one. This is going to be admin-based. This is going to be action-oriented. Let's do this quickly. Let's do something.
Absolutely, because sometimes it's not the meeting itself, which might be people are short on time. It might be, well, actually, then there needs to be written notes to go with some people, because they might need to digest it afterwards and reference it.
Yeah. And I do think we talk too much. Generally, we talk about talking, and action. Then people love the word procrastination at the moment, and that's become part of our human story, that we procrastinate. I don't think that's true. I think it's just something else that we throw at ourselves. We're not working hard enough, whatever that hard enough is. I think it's possible to work quickly, with agility, flexibility, and confidence. And that's not the same as boom, 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 getting fight, flight, freeze because we're constantly at it, and then burn out by whatever it is. Although that's me exaggerating for, you know.
Is there, I interrupted you in that one. Yeah,
No.
was there a third communication strategy you were going to mention?
So we've okay. Let me rewind my dyslexic brain back to where we started. So we started with
Start with email.
start with emails. Then we talked about meetings. I think a third easy win is the one we've already talked about, and that is about actual conversations. So what would really help here? Now, there is the "what can I do to help" bit, but a better question is, what would really help here? Allowing that other person for themselves to help identify with you as the leader or the line manager or the colleague what it is that's needed in that moment.
Yeah, almost what would help you. You're almost giving them permission to highlight what it is.
Or even not them, what would help the task, because that's what everyone's involved in working on. And that depersonalizes it too. So what's going to bring out the best working pattern here to get this done, because we need it,
Yeah, and every time you mention these things for a specific reason, then my brain's leaping around. So, well, you'd ask this. You could ask this to everyone, couldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And
my
then it
point.
becomes the inclusive practice. You'll get different answers, of course, that you need to take into account. But it's and in fact,
Yeah.
they would almost, as you were talking earlier about your ideal space with the sensory overload space for people to walk around, people's different levels of routine that they like or not.
Mm.
In my mind, they're almost could be standardized questions that a leader could use to understand their team, whether they're labeled with any ND or not,
I love it. Yeah.
because it
I
would
think
help
you're
them, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
I think you're absolutely right, James. And the two things we're doing there is we're bringing curiosity, we're taking away narratives. Doesn't it, yes, there can be standardized questions, and yes, there might there is the educative bit. The more we know about what a different brain pattern means or might be affecting that person or other kinds of people, that's really helpful. Because obviously, not every autistic person we're going to meet is the same, but there will be features that over a period of time as a leader that, we can see might impact. And like, the really tricky bit where you get sometimes with autistic, aut ADHDs or aut HDs. I'm trying to keep up to date with current naming, but with people whose brain patterns are autistic and ADHD, you
right?
can have part of the brain that's got, there's part of that person that's going, I need order, I need regular order and a routine, whereas the ADHD bit's going, please set me free. So when you get that kind of
Oh,
situation,
they've
that
got
can be
internal sense.
really, for that person can be really painful. So how can we as leaders help that person in that workspace develop a work habit that's flexible enough to and inclusive enough to help them with both of those elements, depending what day and where they're at. Yeah.
And I guess it's not all down to the manager or leader as well. There's other people in the team that might be able to support in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if a team is open and curious, and compassion's the word maybe I haven't brought in, which is really weird for me because I usually use that word as my first default. But if there's an element of compassion within the communication and curiosity with the people we work with, then I think that can make a huge difference. And if there's acceptance of the fact that everybody is different, without trying to fill in the dots for them, just really trying to see them as they are, then I think that opens up a huge possibility for teams to support each other. Yeah.
It was interesting what you were saying about perhaps we all need to slow down a little bit.
Mm.
And I'm not expecting you to have the answer to this. I don't think
Mm.
there is. I don't think
Mm.
there is one. Yeah,
Mm.
this is just this is definitely. I'm just throwing in an opinion question. Yeah, but with so much going on with AI at the
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
and that's set to continue.
Yeah.
I look at it as a bit. It's a bit like the kind of the mobile phone when that first came out. We have a choice in terms of
Yeah.
how we use it. We had a computer that's more powerful than the one they got to the moon and back on.
Yeah.
We could choose how we use it. And I think obviously there's some choices that have been tremendously positive,
Mm.
and others that have probably been less positive. That have an impact
Mm.
on our daily lives still today, me
Mm.
included.
Mm.
With AI, what would your idea? How do we celebrate humans and get AI to support us if we make the right choice? What's your thoughts on that? I'm not
Yeah.
expecting a perfect answer. But
No. I'm like everyone. I'm in the process of trying to sort out my thinking around it. I think I'm fascinated by just how quickly we keep jumping into virtual spaces to avoid each other. And on one level, I'm going, people are struggling with communication and relationships now already as a result of being more boxed off and removed from personal interactions, although we have a lot more of them, but that, it's like less depth, more
yeah,
quantity.
they're different. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
more texting and less actual talking on the phone, things like that.
Yeah. And the way that I think has impacted on people's ability to negotiate, like we were talking before, that it's become quite binary in terms of the way of thinking. And often we're trying to just kind of get the minimum amount of words out to say the maximum amount. So we're constantly dumbing down what we're trying to say and capture an essence of it. So there's that. And now we're going to introduce an element that's going to replace even more of what we do as humans to interact with each other and to develop our own skill set. So I'm just positing that, like you, like with mobile phones, like the fact that you and I are sitting right here, right now, we're not in the same room, and we're having a really energizing conversation. There's huge possibilities that come from technology and technological leaps. There's a couple of things. Personally, anecdotally, every time I've used AI, I've looked at what it's produced. I'm a fiction writer, and I've written quite a lot of non-fiction stuff too, certainly in terms of business. It's never as good as I can do it, and I'm not saying that's because I'm wonderful, but if it's going to capture the human experience and then recreate a version of it to give back to us, it's going to include our faults. So that's the first thing. We can't avoid the human element of it, because that's part of what AI is trying to capture in order to put things forward. It isn't remarkable possibilities that come from it. And I think, we should be open to that. But I think the danger is for us to use it to replace conversation. So, for example, very simple example, this isn't AI, but it's a Calendly, for example. Apart from the fact that my tech phobia makes me worried to set it up. And it's a great tool. Maybe I shouldn't be saying Calendly, I should be saying an online calendar service.
Other brands are available.
Other brands are available. And Calendly, it does its job really well. But for me, as a consultant or a coach, the first flavour of how I might work with someone comes from setting up that first meeting and how that works. So I want that. I want to have that interaction. I already know sometimes from an initial interaction and the way that the tussle for power over whose calendar is it going to be, who's going to do it, who's going to control the time that it happens. I sometimes know whether someone's going to be someone I can work with or not, just from that initial interaction. And that's not about me labeling it. It's just, again, curiosity going, oh, that's interesting, So mechanisms that speed us up sometimes, for me, don't kind of let us down in other ways. I don't want to miss out on possibilities of getting to know someone or getting to know people or develop my own skill set.
Yeah.
That would be my point. On
Yeah,
some
no,
days, and Canada would be great, because then, it's like I've got 12 things in my head and I really want to meet this person, but I can't think about it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you could say, well, it's an efficient way to get the meeting organised, so you can, when you have the meeting, you can have that proper human interaction.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for your thoughts on that. I'm hoping that we can use it more to celebrate our humanity and the things that we're different. That's the
Mm.
if it was a competition with us versus AI, then there's clear areas that we can win on, and there's areas that we would just concede and get it to do for us.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the balance for me.
You know what fascinates me though? So the story we've been given all the way through these incredible rapid technological innovations over the last 50, 60 years is it will give us more time. And I'm like, to do what? Because all we seem to be doing is doing more and speaking to more people. And we seem more stressed now than we did 30, 40 years ago, maybe. And I find that fascinating. And in answer to your question from ages ago about whether I have any tips or suggestions for the speed and the amount we're doing, I do. I've got a little Canva thing that I shove on LinkedIn a lot.
Right.
Do less, plan less, be less. That's it. It's a bit flip and it's a bit provocative, but in essence, that's the work I do with people.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the choice we've got now, isn't it? If a lot of other technology has forced us to work harder or not switch your phone off when you
Uh,
get home out of a work hour or something, whereas hopefully we can harness AI in the right way that allows us to build
yeah,
in free time, walk in the woods, whatever things you need to do to relax and be and exist and enjoy your life on this
I love
planet.
that. I love that. Thing is, a writer as well, as a fiction writer, I don't want AI to construct a story for me. Why would I do that? I want to write the story. And even with editing, editing for me is when the story really comes alive. So if I'm not
As
part of
a
that editing process and I'm not communicating with other people to help with the editing process, it doesn't, I wouldn't be doing I wouldn't feel like I was fulfilling my function as a fiction writer.
back to neurodiversity, is there anything that you think it could be as a tool used to help certain
Oh,
individuals?
yeah, absolutely. Yes, and a lot of these technologies we've just been talking about are really, really helpful. Spell checker, the fact that we can cut and paste things and put them in a different order, the fact that prompts I've got around me, I've got, like, you can't see obviously, but I've got like 5 old phones and an iPad, and they're all going to go do this, do that. It's not quite at go to the toilet, wash your hair level, but it is at this is the things you need to do throughout the day. So I don't need to carry that in my executive function. So yes,
Right.
absolutely, it could be really freeing as long as we've got the time to appreciate it, though. Yes, I do.
If, if, if leaders were going to take sort of just one bit of advice on, celebrating the neurodiverse workforce,
Yeah.
what what one or couple of things would you say or recap?
Number one, change your emails. No, I'm obsessed with them. No. Number two, encourage a culture where people are curious and they're actually listening to each other. Because, as you said, if that is the ethos of an organization, then some of these things will come out naturally. So, working parties are good, policies are important, but I think more than that, human interaction and giving people safe spaces to speak up about what they need.
Nice, love it. And Neil, I ask everyone this: have you got a book recommendation that you'd like to share?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. So in terms of CPD or my own learning at the moment, I'm reading a book by Susan McConnell, which is called something like somatic internal family systems. I'm just trying to check it on here quickly. Yeah, somatic internal family systems. And what that translated into English, what that means is it's the different parts of us within us, and how we can get different parts of us to talk to each other, but also become very aware of what our body does. Translated into business, for me, that's about different parts of the business as a living body, and then again, just listening to our gut more, just being aware of what our physical responses are to things. And so I'm building that into my coaching.
Thank you for sharing all those great tips. I'm sure leaders and their teams will start to benefit soon. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Great to talk to you, James.